My son had me committed to a nursing home at 80, selling my $3.2 million house while I was locked inside. "You have dementia, Mom," he said, showing the doctor papers I'd never signed. "We're doing this for your own good." I watched him drive away in my car. But 3 months later, a nurse slipped me a phone. "Mrs. Hayes," she whispered, "I think you need to call your daughter." Good day, dear listeners. It's Emma again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. People always said I was sharp for my age. At 80, I still balanced my checkbook by hand, volunteered at the Phoenix Public Library every Tuesday, and could recite the names of all 23 students in the first class I ever taught back in 1967. My name is Eleanor Margaret Hayes, and until 14 months ago, I thought I knew my son. Michael was my firstborn. 54 years old, a partner at Henderson & Associates, one of those corporate law firms downtown with marble lobbies and reception desks the size of my first apartment. He drove a Tesla. He wore suits that cost more than my monthly Social Security check. He called me every Sunday at exactly 6 p.m., like clockwork, just checking in. "Mom," he'd say, "making sure you're okay." I had 2 children, Michael and my daughter Jennifer, who lived in Portland and whom I hadn't spoken to in nearly 11 years. That silence was Michael's doing, though I didn't understand that until much later. He had told me Jennifer was angry with me, that she blamed me for their father's death. Robert, my husband of 44 years, had died of a heart attack 6 years ago while we were visiting the Grand Canyon. It was sudden. It was terrible. And apparently, according to Michael, Jennifer held me responsible because I'd insisted on the trip despite Robert's tiredness. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. I lived alone in the house Robert and I bought in 1985, a 4-bedroom ranch in Scottsdale with a pool Robert had installed himself. One brutal summer when he was convinced he could save money doing it himself. The house was paid off. Between Robert's life insurance, my teacher's pension, and Social Security, I had about $3,200 coming in every month and no debt. The house was worth $3.2 million in the current market. Scottsdale had changed over the years. What used to be affordable had become exclusive. Michael visited once a month, usually the first Saturday. He'd bring Lisa, his wife, and their twin boys, Connor and Ethan, who were 21 and in college at ASU. Lisa was pleasant enough, if a bit distant. She worked from home, something to do with marketing. The boys were polite in that perfunctory way young men are when they're required to visit Grandma. It was Michael who first mentioned the power of attorney. This was last March, almost 18 months ago now. We were sitting on my back patio, watching the sunset turn the mountains purple and orange, and he said, very casually, "Mom, you should think about setting up a POA. Just in case." In case of what? In case something happens and you can't make decisions. It's just smart planning. Dad would have wanted you to be protected. The mention of Robert was strategic. I realize now. Michael knew I still carried guilt about the trip, about insisting we go despite Robert's exhaustion. He knew exactly which strings to pull. "I suppose that makes sense," I said. "Who would I make it?" "Well, I'm the obvious choice," he said, smiling. "I'm a lawyer. I know how these things work. And I'm local. Jennifer's all the way in Portland." I signed the papers 2 weeks later in his office. He had them already drawn up. The medication started in June. Michael brought it himself, a Wednesday afternoon, which was unusual. He never visited midweek. "Mom, I was talking to Lisa about you, and she's worried you might be having some memory issues." "What memory issues?" I was genuinely confused. I'd had no problems. I'd just finished reorganizing my entire bookshelf by author, a project that had taken me 2 weeks and required remembering where everything went. You called me 3 times last week, asking what day our visit was. I did not. You did. And you seemed confused about it. Lisa thinks you should see a doctor, but in the meantime, Dr. Patel prescribed something that might help. Just to be safe, he handed me a prescription bottle. Donepezil, the label said, for memory support. Michael, I don't think I need this. Mom. His voice changed slightly, became firmer. You're 80 years old. A little forgetfulness is normal, but we want to catch it early. Please. For me, I took the pills. That was my first mistake. Within 2 weeks, I was genuinely confused. I'd forget what day it was. I'd lose track of conversations. Once, I found myself standing in my kitchen with no memory of why I'd walked in there. It terrified me. Michael's visits increased. Twice a week now, always checking on me, always asking questions. Do you remember what you had for breakfast? Do you remember what we talked about on Sunday? Often, I couldn't. The medication, I would learn much later, wasn't for memory support. It was causing the problems it claimed to treat. But I didn't know that then. I just knew I was getting worse. In August, Michael suggested he take over my bank accounts. Just to help out. Mom, you've been having trouble remembering to pay bills. I hadn't been. Or at least I didn't think I had been. But Michael showed me 3 overdue notices. The electric company, the water company, the homeowners association. I had no memory of receiving them. Let me add my name to your accounts, he said gently. I'll make sure everything gets paid. You don't need to worry about any of this. I said yes. What else could I do? I was frightened. I thought I was losing my mind. The bank accounts were just the beginning. Over the next month, Michael had me sign a series of documents. A revised will, a healthcare directive, something called a quitclaim deed, which he explained was to make estate planning easier when the time came. I signed everything. I trusted him. He was my son. He was a lawyer. He was helping me. On October 12th, I woke up in a place I didn't recognize. The walls were beige. There was a hospital bed. The smell was antiseptic and unfamiliar. I tried to sit up and realized there were rails on the bed. A woman in scrubs came in. Her name tag said Rachel. She smiled in that professional, pitying way healthcare workers smile at confused elderly patients. Good morning, Eleanor. How are you feeling today? Where am I? You're at Desert Haven Memory Care. Your son brought you in yesterday. Do you remember? I did not remember. The last thing I remembered clearly was eating breakfast in my kitchen. Oatmeal with blueberries. NPR on the radio. That had been... when? Days ago? Weeks? I don't understand. Why am I here? You're here because you need specialized care, sweetheart. Your family felt it was the safest place for you. Michael arrived that afternoon. He sat in a chair beside my bed, looking concerned and tired. Lisa was with him, standing near the door. Mom, we had to do this. You weren't safe at home anymore. Last week, you left the stove on all night. You could have burned the house down. I had no memory of that. I had no memory of much, to be honest. The medication had increased. I would later learn. The confusion was total. I want to go home, I said. Mom, that's not possible right now. The doctors think you need to be somewhere with supervision. This is a good place. It's one of the best facilities in Phoenix. The house. The house is being taken care of. Don't worry about that. Just focus on getting better. He left after 20 minutes. I sat in that beige room and tried to understand what had happened to my life. Desert Haven Memory Care cost $400 per month. I learned this from a packet of information they gave me the second week. The facility was nice, as these places go. Clean, well-staffed. They had activities, movie nights, a small garden. But it was still a locked ward. I couldn't leave without permission. My phone had been taken for safekeeping. My purse was gone. My car keys. Everything. I was a prisoner in a place I couldn't afford on an income that had apparently evaporated. It was a nurse named Sarah Chen who first made me suspicious. She was in her mid-40s, professional, kind without being condescending. She didn't talk to me like I was a child, which most of the staff did. One morning, about 3 weeks in, she was checking my vitals and asked, "Mrs. Hayes, can you tell me what year you were born?" 1945, I said, immediately. "And your children's names?" "Michael Robert Hayes, Jennifer Ann Hayes." "Your address before you came here?" 4247 East Ocotillo Road, Scottsdale, Arizona 85251. Sarah paused. She looked at me carefully. "You're very sharp this morning." "I have good days and bad days," I said, which was what I'd been told to say. "Mrs. Hayes, what medications were you taking before you came here?" I listed them. The Dunpezil. The 2 others Michael had added over the summer. Sarah wrote them down. "And who prescribed these?" "My son gave them to me. He said Dr. Patel prescribed them." "Your son is not a medical doctor, is he?" "No. He's a lawyer." Something changed in her expression. She finished taking my blood pressure, told me to have a good day, and left. I didn't think much of it then. But 3 days later, she came back during a different shift. One where the regular supervisor wasn't on the floor. "Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did you ever actually see Dr. Patel? Did you ever go to his office?" I thought about it. Really thought. "No," I said slowly. "Michael just brought me the pills." He said Dr. Patel had called them in. Sarah sat down in the chair beside my bed. "Mrs. Hayes, I pulled your medical records. You don't have a prescription for donepezil from Dr. Patel or anyone else in our system. And the other medications you were taking, they're not standard for memory issues. They're actually medications that can cause confusion in elderly patients." The room seemed to tilt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I think you should talk to your daughter, Jennifer. She won't speak to me. She blames me for her father's death." Sarah's expression was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Hayes, I think you should try anyway." She slipped me a cell phone the next morning. A basic flip phone. Old. Probably hers from years ago. She'd programmed one number into it. "I found her online," Sarah said quietly. "Be careful. Don't let anyone see this. Call when you're alone." I waited until 10 p.m., when the night shift was minimal, and most patients were asleep. My hands shook as I dialed. Jennifer answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" I hadn't heard her voice in 11 years. It cracked something open in my chest. "Jennifer, it's Mom." Silence. Then, "Mom? Whose number is this?" "I don't have much time. I'm in a memory care facility. Michael put me here. He said you blamed me for your father's death. Is that true?" "What?" "No. Mom, Her voice broke. "Michael told me you didn't want to talk to me. He said you were angry that I'd moved away, that you said I abandoned Dad." The pieces began to slide into place. Sharp and terrible. "Jennifer, I need help. Tell me where you are. I'm coming." Jennifer flew in from Portland the next day. Sarah arranged for her to visit during a shift change when scrutiny was lighter. My daughter walked into that beige room, and I barely recognized her. She was 50 years old now, No longer the 39-year-old woman I'd last seen at Robert's funeral. Her hair had gone partly gray. She sat beside my bed and took my hands and cried. So did I. Tell me everything, she said. I told her. The power of attorney, the medications, the bank accounts, the documents I'd signed, the house, all of it. Jennifer's face went through several expressions. Shock, anger, a terrible, cold fury that reminded me of her father when he was pushed too far. Mom, do you know what a quitclaim deed is? Michael said it was for estate planning. A quitclaim deed transfers property ownership. If you signed one, you don't own the house anymore. He does. The floor dropped out from under me. But I didn't. I wouldn't. You were being drugged, Mom. You weren't thinking clearly. He made sure of that. Jennifer pulled out her phone and made a call. I need to speak to David Brennan, please. It's urgent. Tell him it's Jennifer Hayes Thornton, and it's about an elder abuse case. She paused. Yes, I'll hold. David Brennan was her former law school classmate, now practicing elder law in Phoenix. Jennifer had gone to law school late, after the kids, a fact I'd been proud of and Michael had always dismissed. She'd never passed the bar, choosing instead to work as a paralegal in Portland. But she knew lawyers. And she knew what to do. Within 48 hours, Jennifer had hired Brennan's firm. They filed an emergency motion to review my competency and the validity of the power of attorney. They requested copies of all medical records and all documents I'd signed in the past 18 months. Michael found out when a process server showed up at his office. He called Jennifer immediately. She put him on speaker so I could hear. What the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was tight with rage. I'm protecting our mother from financial abuse, Michael. What the hell do you think you've been doing? Mom has dementia. She's not competent. You have no right. If she has dementia, there will be medical records from an actual doctor, not pills you handed her. She's not your concern anymore, Jennifer. Stay out of this. I'm her daughter, and I'm not going anywhere. See you in court. She hung up, looked at me. Mom, this is going to get ugly. Are you ready? I thought about my house, my independence, the 11 years Michael had stolen from me and Jennifer, the trust he'd violated, the life he'd tried to take. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The first court hearing was 10 days later. Judge Patricia Martinez presided. She was in her 60s, precise, with silver hair and an expression that revealed nothing. Michael arrived with 2 attorneys. Big firm, expensive suits. They filed motions, arguing that Jennifer had no standing, that I was incompetent, that this was a family disagreement being blown out of proportion. David Brennan brought a neurologist. Dr. Amanda Foster had examined me 3 days prior. She'd run cognitive tests, memory assessments, blood work. She'd reviewed the medications Michael had been giving me. She testified for 40 minutes. The summary was devastating for Michael's case. Mrs. Hayes shows no signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Her cognitive function is normal for her age. The medications she was taking, however, would have caused significant confusion, memory loss, and disorientation. These medications were not prescribed by any licensed physician in Arizona. They were obtained, as far as I can determine, through an online pharmacy using forged prescription information. Michael's lead attorney stood. Foster is basing this on a few days of observation. Mrs. Hayes has been exhibiting memory problems for months. As documented by whom? Judge Martinez asked. Do you have medical records from a treating physician? The attorney hesitated. We have the son's testimony about her behavior. I'm not interested in testimony about behavior. I'm interested in medical documentation. Do you have any? Not at this time, Your Honor. The judge looked at Michael, who was sitting very still. Mr. Hayes, you're an attorney, correct? Yes, Your Honor. Then you understand the significance of administering medication to an elderly person without a valid prescription. I was trying to help my mother. That's not what I asked. She turned to David Brennan. I'm ordering a full investigation into all financial transactions and document signings from the past 18 months. I'm freezing all assets currently held in Mr. Hayes's name that originated from Mrs. Hayes. And I'm ordering that Mrs. Hayes be released from Desert Haven immediately, pending a full competency evaluation by a court-appointed physician. Michael's face went white. I moved in with Jennifer at a hotel near the airport. She'd taken family leave from her job in Portland. We had 3 weeks before the next hearing. David Brennan's firm moved fast. They subpoenaed bank records, the quitclaim deed, the power of attorney documents. They found an expert in questioned documents who compared my signature on the deed to known samples. The conclusion: the signature on the quitclaim deed had been traced from another document. It was my signature, technically, but it had been copied, not written. The document was a forgery. The bank records were worse. Michael had transferred $127,000 from my accounts to his over the course of 6 months. Small amounts at first, $2,000 here, $5,000 there. Then, larger sums as he got bolder. 3万美元, 4万5千美元. He was systematically draining you, David told me. And the house transfer, even if you had signed it willingly, would be voidable because you were under undue influence from the medication. Can we prove he forged the prescription? Jennifer asked. We're working on it. We've contacted Dr. Patel. He confirmed he never prescribed anything for Eleanor. We've also contacted the pharmacy. They have records showing someone called in prescriptions using Patel's DEA number. But Patel says it wasn't him. So Michael was impersonating a doctor to get controlled substances for his mother, Jennifer said flatly. Yes. Which is a felony. I sat in that hotel room and tried to process it. My son, my firstborn, the baby I'd rocked and fed and loved, had drugged me, forged documents, stolen my money, and locked me away so he could take everything I owned. Why? I asked. Why would he do this? Jennifer and David exchanged a look. Mrs. Hayes, David said gently. We pulled Michael's financial records as part of discovery. He's in serious debt. Gambling debts. $340,000 worth. The room went silent. The twins' college tuition alone is $160,000 a year, David continued. His mortgage is underwater. He's been hiding it from Lisa, your house, your savings. That was supposed to be his way out. I thought about the Sunday phone calls, the concern, the visits. It had all been a performance. A long, careful con. What happens now? I asked. Now we go back to court, and we destroy him, David said simply. The second hearing was 4 weeks later. The courtroom was fuller this time. Michael had brought Lisa, who looked pale and shocked. Jennifer sat beside me. Sarah Chen, the nurse from Desert Haven, sat in the back. She'd been subpoenaed to testify. David Brennan presented the evidence methodically. The forged deed, the fraudulent prescriptions, the bank transfers, the document expert's testimony, Dr. Foster's evaluation. Then Sarah took the stand. She described my condition when I arrived at Desert Haven versus 3 weeks later when the medication cleared my system. She testified about the conversation where I'd told her Michael had given me the pills directly. In your professional opinion, David asked, was Mrs. Hayes suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's? No, she was suffering from medication side effects that mimicked cognitive decline. Once those medications were stopped, She returned to baseline cognition. Michael's attorney tried to argue that I'd consented to everything, that the signatures were genuine, that this was a misunderstanding. Then, Judge Martinez asked Michael directly, "Mr. Hayes, did you forge your mother's signature on the quitclaim deed?" I watched him struggle. He'd been coached, clearly, but the judge had asked a direct question. I may have signed some documents on her behalf, yes, but only because she'd given me power of attorney. That's not what I asked. "Did you sign her name to that deed?" "Yes or no?" A long pause. "Yes. And did you obtain medications for your mother using a physician's DEA number without that physician's knowledge or consent?" Another pause. "I was trying to help her. Answer the question." Yes. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Martinez's ruling came 3 days later in writing. The quitclaim deed was void. All property was to be returned to me. Michael was to repay all funds taken from my accounts, with interest. The power of attorney was revoked, and the court was referring the matter to the Arizona State Bar for disciplinary proceedings and to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. Michael was disbarred within 6 months. Henderson and Associates let him go immediately. The criminal charges took longer, but eventually he pleaded guilty to elder abuse, fraud, and obtaining controlled substances by fraud. He got 18 months in prison and 5 years probation. Lisa divorced him while he was serving his sentence. She kept the house they'd owned together and custody of the twins. Connor and Ethan reached out to me eventually, apologizing for not seeing what their father was doing. I told them the same thing I wished someone had told me. Loving someone doesn't mean you're responsible for their choices. Jennifer moved back to Phoenix. She found a job with an elder advocacy nonprofit. We have dinner together every Tuesday, and she volunteers at the library on the days I do. I still live in my house on Ocotillo Road. The pool needs resurfacing, but I'm getting quotes. I planted tomatoes this spring. I joined a book club. I'm taking an art class at the community college. Sarah Chen and I have coffee once a month. She still works at Desert Haven, and she says I inspired her to pay closer attention to family dynamics when patients are admitted. She's caught 2 more cases of potential abuse since mine. As for Michael, he writes me letters from prison sometimes. They're apologies, mostly. Explanations about the gambling, the debt, the pressure he felt. I read them. I don't respond. Maybe someday I will. But forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't require reconciliation. I can acknowledge his remorse without giving him access to my life again. Jennifer asked me once if I was angry. We were sitting on my back patio, watching the sunset, the same place where Michael had first convinced me to sign that power of attorney. I thought about it honestly. I was, I said, for a long time, but anger is exhausting, and it gives him real estate in my head he doesn't deserve anymore. What do you feel now? Free, I said. For the first time in years, I feel free. Here's what I know now that I didn't know at 80. Your children are not always who you raise them to be. Trust is something that should be verified, especially when money is involved. And there is no age at which you stop deserving dignity and autonomy. I'm not a remarkable woman. I'm a woman who got lucky. Lucky that a nurse cared enough to ask questions. Lucky that my daughter hadn't actually abandoned me. Lucky that I lived in a state with strong elder protection laws. Not everyone is that lucky. If you're listening to this and you have aging parents, pay attention. Visit them. Talk to them without their other children present. Ask to see their bank statements. Notice if their personality changes or if they suddenly seem confused. Those pills your sibling is giving them from the doctor? Ask to see the prescription bottle. Check with the doctor yourself. And if you're listening to this and you're older, like me, remember this. Being elderly is not the same as being incompetent. You have rights. You deserve respect. And if someone is trying to convince you that you can't trust your own mind, get a second opinion from a real doctor, in person. I planted a Meyer lemon tree in my backyard last month. It won't bear fruit for a few years, but that's okay. I'm planning to be here. Would you have fought back if you were in my place? Or would you have trusted that Sunday phone call, that concern, that son who seemed to be helping? I don't judge the answer. These things are easier to see from the outside. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment, subscribe, and thank you truly for listening.